Let me start with something that feels almost wrong to admit. When people talk about powerful art, they usually mean loud art. Big gestures, shocking images, something that screams importance. But some of the most devastating art ever made does the opposite. It whispers, it stays quiet, it refuses to entertain you. My mom is an artist and my father is a calligrapher. I've lived in an artistic environment my entire life, and my parents have always told me stories about artists. But this one has been with me ever since I've heard it. And this is where Käthe Kollwitz lives. She didn't paint heroes. She didn't celebrate victory. She didn't aesthetize suffering. She drew grief, hunger, exhaustion, mothers holding dead children, workers with hollow eyes, hands that look like they've never rested. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. She didn't do this as a phase. She didn't experiment with darkness and then move on. She spent her entire life looking directly at pain and never blinking. This story feels fake because it goes against everything we are taught about success, ambition, and art. No glamour, no rebellion art, no self-destruction myth, just endurance. And that might be more disturbing than chaos. Käthe Kollwitz was born in 1867 in Königsberg, then part of Prussia. She grew up in a politically conscious household that valued social responsibility over status. From early on, she was encouraged to observe real life, not ideal forms, not aristocratic fantasies. She trained as an artist at a time when women were largely excluded from official academies. Already, she was operating slightly outside the system. But she didn't adopt the role of the rebellious outsider. She didn't dramatize her position, she just worked. She married a doctor who treated working-class patients in Berlin. That choice shaped everything. Her studio wasn't isolated from suffering. It was surrounded by it. She saw poverty up close. Disease, hunger, women collapsing under labor and childbirth, children dying young. Socially, she was quiet, reserved, not charismatic in a performative sense. She didn't cultivate scandal or mystique, but her inner world was intense, almost unbearable at times. The defining rupture in her life came during World War I, when her son Peter was killed in action. That loss didn't radicalize her overnight. It hollowed her out slowly, and then it rewired everything. Kollwitz lived through one of the most violent and unstable periods in modern European history. Industrialization reshaped cities brutally. Workers lived crowded, unsafe lives. Social safety nets barely existed. Women carried impossible loads: labor, caregiving, survival, with almost no recognition. Then came World War I, mass death on an industrial scale, followed by revolution, economic collapse, political extremism, and eventually fascism. Think of it like this. Germany during Kollwitz's lifetime was a system in permanent breakdown mode. Institutions failed, ideologies overpromised, ordinary people paid the price. Art during this time often tried to escape into abstraction, nationalism, or spectacle. Kollwitz refused that exit. She stayed with the human cost, and that made her deeply uncomfortable for those in power. The central thing Käthe Kollwitz did was refuse distance. She made prints and drawings that forced viewers into proximity with suffering. No romantic lighting, no symbolic escape hatches. Faces are close. Hands dominate the frame. Bodies feel heavy, grounded, exhausted. Simple explanation: she used printmaking, etching, lithography, woodcut to create stark, reproducible images of grief, labor, and loss. Modern analogy? Think documentary photography, but without the illusion of objectivity. This is empathy with weight. What she thought, if suffering is seen clearly, it can't be ignored. What actually happened? People looked and felt accused. Her work wasn't propaganda in the loud sense. It was quieter, more dangerous. It didn't tell you what to think. It made you feel complicit. Okay, pause. Because this part hits harder the longer you think about it. Kollwitz lost her son. She never recovered from it. And instead of turning away, instead of softening her work or finding distraction, she did the opposite. She spent decades returning to that grief, drawing it, sculpting it, revisiting it from every emotional angle. That's not catharsis, that's commitment to pain. And it raises a disturbing question. When does processing become preservation? When does remembrance turn into refusal to move on? This isn't inspirational grief. It's honest grief. And honestly, it's not comforting. Kollwitz's story is interesting because it breaks the myth that art has to shock or innovate to be powerful. She didn't invent a new visual language, she stripped one down. Her work shows how suffering becomes invisible when it's normalized, and how dangerous that invisibility is. She forces attention back onto people society trains itself to overlook. There's no triumph in her images, no arc toward resolution, and that's precisely why they stay with you. This isn't art that reassures, it's art that refuses to lay you off the hook. You've seen this psychological pattern before. The caregiver who absorbs pain silently, the witness who refuses distraction, the person who chooses responsibility over escape. Kollwitz represents a type we rarely celebrate, someone who doesn't seek transformation, but stays present. In a culture obsessed with healing, closure, and moving on, she represents the uncomfortable reality that some losses never resolve, they only integrate. That recognition is unsettling because it feels true. What stays with me about Käthe Kollwitz isn't her politics or even her grief, it's her restraint. She could have shouted, she could have dramatized her suffering, she could have turned herself into a symbol. Instead, she stayed quiet and relentless. She teaches a hard lesson. Not all strength looks like resistance. Sometimes it looks like endurance without applause. And we don't know how to reward that. This story messes with the assumption that art exists to uplift. It challenges the idea that suffering needs a lesson or a payoff. It asks whether witnessing pain is a responsibility, not a choice. Kollwitz leaves you with a question that lingers uncomfortably. If you really looked at suffering without filters, would you act differently? Or just look away more carefully? There's no answer offered, only tension. Käthe Kollwitz didn't make art to be admired. She made it to be endured. And once you have really seen her work, you don't forget how heavy being human can be. You didn't expect to think about that, but now you will.